You felt it again today. That sting, that tightness in your chest. Someone said something, someone did something, and you broke. You hate that about yourself, don't you? Here's the truth nobody around you will say out loud. You are emotionally fragile, and it is costing you everything. Your relationships, your decisions, your power. Every time someone disrespects you, you react. Every time life hits you, you collapse. Every time pressure mounts, you crack like glass under a boot. And the worst part, you already know this. You've known it for years. But knowing it hasn't fixed it, because you've been treating symptoms. You've been doing breathing exercises and journaling, telling yourself to just calm down. Meanwhile, the wolves around you, the manipulators, the power players, the emotionally cold operators, they watch you bleed. And they file it away. They know exactly which button to press, exactly when to press it. Napoleon Hill, the man who spent 20 years studying the most powerful minds in human history, didn't write about emotional strength as a feel-good concept. He wrote about it as survival infrastructure. Hill interviewed 500 of the most dangerous, successful, sovereign individuals who ever lived, and the pattern he found wasn't intelligence, it wasn't talent, it wasn't luck, it was emotional unbreakability, the ability to feel nothing when nothing is what the situation demands. That is not coldness. That is not numbness. That is not psychopathy. That is mastery. And today, you are going to learn it. Your emotional volatility is not a personality trait. It is a strategic error. Every time you react, you hand someone a weapon. Every time you break, you signal to the room exactly where to aim next time. Today, we are correcting that error permanently. Here is what this video will give you. 5 battle-tested principles drawn from Napoleon Hill's hidden frameworks, Machiavellian power philosophy, and modern psychological architecture. Principle 1. The Iron Vault. How to seal your emotional core. Principle 2. The Predator's Pause. Why your reaction speed is your greatest liability. Principle 3. The Pain Conversion Engine. How to turn wounds into weapons. Principle 4. The Strategic Mask. What emotionally unbreakable people show the world. And Principle 5. The Fortress Mindset. How to build a psychological structure that nothing can penetrate. Stay until the end, because the 5th principle is the one every self-help channel deliberately skips. And it is the only one that actually makes the others work. Let's begin. Your inner world is a classified document. Ask yourself this question. Who has access to how you actually feel? Your coworkers, your partner, strangers on the internet, the person who cut you off in traffic this morning. If the answer is anyone who triggers you, then you don't have an inner world. You have a public bulletin board. Napoleon Hill identified what he called the mastermind, the idea that true power begins in the architecture of your own mind, not in your network, not in your skills, in the sovereignty of your internal state. But here's what Hill understood that his popularizers sanitized out of his work. Sovereignty is not peace. Sovereignty is control. The most powerful minds he studied, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, were not men who felt less. They were men who had constructed an iron vault around their emotional core. What happened inside that vault was their business. What showed on the surface was their choice. This is not repression. Psychology is clear on this. Repression, burying emotion without processing it, creates pressure. It creates explosions. It creates the man who seemed so calm until he didn't. The Iron Vault is different. The Iron Vault means you process in private and perform in public. You feel the anger. You acknowledge the fear. You sit with the humiliation. But you do it on your own schedule, in your own space, under your own conditions, not in real time, not in front of the person who caused it, not as a reaction. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The fox does not howl when it's afraid. It repositions. You have been howling. Here is your tactical directive. 1. When triggered, implement the 90-second rule. Neuroscience confirms that emotional chemical surges in your bloodstream last exactly 90 seconds. After that, you are choosing to stay in the state. Count it. Wait it out. 2. Identify your 3 primary emotional triggers. Write them down. Name them like you're filing a report. When you name a thing, you reduce its power over you by 60%. This is not a metaphor. This is documented psychological fact. 3. Build a decompression ritual. A private process you execute after high-pressure interactions. Not meditation or journaling necessarily. A cold, deliberate state reset. Walk, drive, lift, whatever returns you to baseline. Make it non-negotiable. Your emotions are data. Treat them like classified intelligence, not for public consumption, not for reactive display. The Iron Vault protects your most valuable asset, your unpredictability, because when no one can read you, no one can play you. And that brings us to the most dangerous mistake emotionally fragile people make. Speed is the enemy of power. Count to 3. Watch what happens. The next time someone insults you, the next time someone challenges you, the next time the pressure hits and every nerve in your body screams to respond right now. Count 2, 3. Nothing dramatic. No visible delay. 3 seconds of absolute stillness behind your eyes. And watch how completely it changes the dynamic. Here is what nobody tells you about emotional reactivity. It is not passion. It is not authenticity. It is not strength. It is prey behavior. When a lion moves through tall grass and a gazelle hears a sound, what does the gazelle do? It bolts. Immediate, explosive, reactive. The body hijacks the brain because survival historically demanded it. But you are not a gazelle, and this is not the savannah. In human social hierarchies, in boardrooms, in relationships, in power dynamics, the one who reacts first almost always loses. Napoleon Hill called this controlled attention, the deliberate, disciplined act of directing your mental focus rather than allowing external stimuli to direct it for you. He documented this across every high-power individual in his research. Not one of them was impulsive. Every single one had developed, through deliberate practice, the ability to pause between stimulus and response. Viktor Frankl, not a power philosopher, but a man who survived the unsurvivable, said, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, that is the battlefield." Most people have a space of approximately 0 milliseconds. Emotionally unbreakable people have a space they live in. This connects directly to what psychologists call cognitive dissonance weaponization, the practice of forcing your opponents to react to your calm while they expected chaos. When someone attacks you and you respond with stillness, you have just introduced a pattern interrupt into their psychological attack sequence. They expected escalation. They get silence. Their entire script collapses. You've seen this. You know the person who never raises their voice, but somehow controls every room they enter. That is not personality. That is training. Your tactical directives. 1. Practice the physical anchor. In high-pressure moments, press your thumb and index finger together, barely perceptibly. This micro-gesture is your signal to your nervous system. Predator mode, not prey mode. Condition this response over weeks of low-stakes practice until it's automatic. 2. Reframe all social aggression as information, not attack. When someone tries to provoke you, they have just revealed their strategy, their insecurity, their objective. You are not a target. You are an intelligence officer receiving a field report. 3. Never respond to emotional escalation with matching energy. Calibrate downward. Speak slower. Lower your register. The person who controls the temperature controls the room. Ask yourself this right now. When was the last time your reaction actually served you? Not felt good, not felt righteous, actually served you. If you can't answer that, you already know what's been happening. Good. Hold that recognition. Because the next principle is where you turn that recognition into fuel. Every wound is raw material. Here is where most people stop. They learn to control their reactions. They learn to pause. They feel better about themselves. They think they've arrived. And then life hits them with something real. A betrayal. A public humiliation. A failure so complete it rearranges their identity. And everything they built collapses. Because controlling reaction is only half the system. The other half is conversion. Napoleon Hill was not subtle about this. He called it transmutation, the alchemical process of redirecting destructive emotional energy into constructive force. He documented it obsessively. He believed, based on 2 decades of research, that the most devastating experiences in a human life are also its most powerful fuel sources, but only if you build the conversion engine first. Carl Jung, who never met Hill but reached the same coordinates from a different direction, called this shadow integration, the psychological process of absorbing and metabolizing your darkness rather than denying it. People who deny their pain don't become peaceful, they become brittle, and when they shatter completely. The wolves in your life know this. They can smell brittle. Machiavelli understood conversion at a strategic level. He wrote, "Never waste the opportunity offered by a good crisis." He was talking about political power, but the architecture applies to personal power identically. Your crisis is a resource. Your wound is a laboratory. Your humiliation is a weapons manufacturing facility. If you choose to operate it that way, here is how this works psychologically. Pain produces cortisol. Cortisol produces alertness, focus, and aggressive energy. In prey animals, this energy is used for running. In predators, this same neurochemical cocktail is redirected into hunting. The difference is not biology. The difference is framework. When you interpret pain as an attack, your body runs. When you interpret pain as data, your body strategizes. Tactical directives. 1. After any significant setback, implement the 24-hour silence protocol. No posting, no confiding, no processing publicly. 24 hours of private absorption. During this time, ask only one question: what does this reveal, and how do I use it? 2. Build what Hill called your definiteness of purpose. A singular, consuming objective so clear and so large that all emotional pain becomes subordinate to it. People with no purpose feel everything. People with a mission feel selectively. The mission filters the pain into signal and noise. 3. Map your top 3 wounds. Not to heal them in the therapeutic sense, but to understand their output. What does your abandonment wound drive you toward? What does your humiliation wound make you obsessively good at? Identify the conversion pathway, then deliberately route your future pain through it. This is not toxic positivity. This is not everything happens for a reason. This is engineering. You are not a victim of your emotional history. You are a facility manager who hasn't learned to run the machinery yet. Now, you've built the vault. You've mastered the pause. You've installed the conversion engine. But none of this matters if the face you show the world tells a different story. What you show is a weapon. Use it deliberately. This is the principle that makes people uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is attention, and attention is how you learn. Most people believe that emotional authenticity, showing what you feel when you feel it, is a virtue. That transparency builds trust. That vulnerability is strength. In certain contexts, with certain people, in certain relationships, this is partially true, but in competitive environments, in power dynamics, in negotiations, in any situation where someone else's gain comes at your expense, emotional transparency is a liability. It is the single most exploited weakness in human social interaction. Psychologists call this information asymmetry. The party with more information about the other's emotional state holds structural power. Every covert contract, every hidden expectation, every unspoken transaction is enforced through reading emotional cues. When you are readable, you are manageable. Machiavelli was clinical on this point. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. The strategic mask is not lying. It is not manipulation. It is the recognition that your public emotional presentation is a broadcast, and you are the editor, the most emotionally unbreakable people you've ever encountered. That person who never seems rattled, who always seems to have more information than they reveal, who you can never quite read. They are not emotionally absent. They are editorially precise. They have decided, through deliberate practice, what to broadcast and what to withhold. They have separated their internal experience, which is rich, complex, and fully human, from their external presentation, which is strategic. This is what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind persona in public life. The gap between interior reality and exterior projection is not deception. It is professionalism at its highest level. Tactical directives. 1. Conduct a facial audit. Record yourself in a conversation. Review your expressions during moments of stress or challenge. Most people are shocked by how much they broadcast. Identify your 3 most readable micro-expressions. Then, practice neutralizing them. 2. Develop your default register, a specific practiced facial expression and body posture that you return to in high-stakes interactions. Not a fake smile, not a frozen stare. A calibrated neutrality that reveals nothing and implies everything. 3. Practice selective disclosure. In the next 7 days, in every significant interaction, deliberately withhold one piece of emotional information you would normally share. Notice how it changes the dynamic. Notice who reaches toward you, trying to read you. Information asymmetry in action. You are not a machine for other people's emotional convenience. You are a sovereign intelligence, and sovereign intelligences control their broadcasts. One more principle remains. The 5th, the one I told you to wait for, and I need you to pay close attention. Because without this principle, everything else we've discussed is just tactics without a foundation. You are not a feeling, you are a structure. This is the principle every self-help channel skips, because it is the hardest one to sell. It requires no supplements, no morning routine, no vision board. It requires a fundamental identity shift. Here is the problem with everything you've been taught about emotional health. It treats emotions as you. It says what you feel is who you are. Honor your feelings. Follow your feelings. Your feelings are your compass. And this framework, however well-intentioned, produces people who are constitutionally vulnerable to anyone who can manipulate their emotional state. Because if your feelings are you, then whoever controls your feelings controls you. The fortress mindset begins with a single cognitive restructuring. You are not your emotions, you are the structure that processes them. Napoleon Hill, in his lesser-known masterwork, The Law of Success, described what he called the master architect of self, the metacognitive identity that stands above personality, above mood, above circumstance, the part of you that observes your reactions rather than becoming them. This is what Stoic philosophers called the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty. The command center of the self that remains operative regardless of what the emotional periphery is experiencing. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, warrior, stoic, put it this way: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But here is what Marcus did not fully articulate, and what Hill understood implicitly. This ruling faculty does not emerge naturally. It is constructed. It is built through repetition, through deliberate adversity, through the daily practice of choosing your response over and over and over until the architecture becomes load-bearing. The fortress is not built in a crisis. The fortress is built before the crisis, so that when the crisis arrives, and it will arrive, you are not constructing shelter in a storm. You are already inside a structure that nothing can penetrate. Ask yourself this question. If someone took away your relationship, would you still know who you are? If your career collapsed tomorrow, would your identity survive? If the person you most want to respect you withdrew that respect permanently, would you remain intact? If the answer to any of those questions is no, then you do not yet have a fortress. You have a house of cards with nice curtains. Tactical directives. 1. Define your identity core. A written statement of who you are that contains 0 references to what you do, who loves you, or what you have achieved. Strip away every external validator. What remains? That remainder is your fortress foundation. If nothing remains, you have your first assignment. 2. Implement voluntary adversity. This is not masochism. This is load testing. Deliberately expose yourself to manageable discomfort, cold exposure, difficult conversations, physical challenge, social risk, on a daily schedule. You are not torturing yourself. You are in construction. Each survived discomfort is a brick. 3. Practice outcome independence. Before any high-stakes interaction, a meeting, negotiation, confrontation, define your identity minimum. Not the outcome you want, but the version of yourself you will be regardless of the outcome. Then hold to that version with everything you have. The outcome becomes secondary. Your structure becomes primary. The person who wants something desperately can be manipulated. The person who prefers something but needs nothing is functionally unmanipulable. That is the fortress. That is what emotionally unbreakable actually means. Let's bring this together. You came into this video broken in some way, reactive, readable, running from pain instead of converting it, showing the world more than it has earned the right to see. Building your identity on foundations that other people can pull out from under you. That is not weakness of character. That is an absence of architecture. And architecture can be built. The iron vault. Your emotional core becomes classified, processed in private, never displayed on demand. The predator's pause, your reaction speed becomes your deliberate choice. The space between stimulus and response becomes the territory you live in. The pain conversion engine. Your wounds become raw material. Your setbacks become fuel. Your crisis becomes your laboratory. The strategic mask. Your public emotional presentation becomes a deliberate broadcast, edited, precise, strategically controlled. The fortress mindset. Your identity shifts from a feeling to a structure, something built, something load-bearing, something that nothing outside you can bring down. Here is what happens if you do nothing with this. You stay reactive. The wolves around you continue to locate your triggers with ease. Someone who is slightly more composed, slightly more controlled, slightly less readable than you takes the opportunity, takes the room, takes the outcome you wanted. Not because they were smarter, not because they deserved it more, because they built the thing you are still thinking about building. The gap between who you are today and who this framework produces is not years, it is not months, it is a decision made right now, followed by daily construction. If this video rewired something in you, do two things. Subscribe, because this channel is building a library of strategic, psychological frameworks that you will not find on motivational channels that want you to feel good. We want you to be unbreakable. That is different. That is harder, and that is worth your attention. And drop a comment below. Write the word fortress, and tell me which principle hit you hardest, because the people who comment with that word are telling me something about themselves. They're not passive consumers, they're builders. Are you a builder? Then start today, not tomorrow, not when conditions are better, not when you feel ready. Today.